Hello, everyone, and welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast, where we invite you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist. Our goal is to create emotional growth with you through the medium of a podcast. Feedback and discussion is not only welcomed, but sought on the website throughatherapist'seyes.com on the blog tab. The human emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together. And also a moment for our sponsoring agency, Metrolina Psychotherapy Associates. It's a psychotherapy agency located in Belmont, North Carolina. They are serving children, adolescents, adults, and couples. Metrolina was founded July 1st, 2010. They strive to work with you towards emotional growth. Check them out, metpsych.com, or you can call them 704-461-8253. My gosh, that was the first time of an introduction to our inaugural show here on Through a Therapist's Eyes, something in the planning for 20 some odd years, man.
20 some odd years. That's interesting. It's good to see it come to fruition and good to be a part of it. So tell me, obviously we didn't have podcasts 25 years ago. And so what did it look like to you way back then?
Not this. Yeah, way back then, it was an interest. I guess I'd like to share just a little bit about what was in my head and how this whole thing kind of got created.
Yeah, before you do that though, who are you?
Chris Gazdick is my name. Who are you?
My name is Craig Graves.
All right, we are co-hosting this show. Yeah, we got to get used to pulling you in and telling them who we are. I guess. Yeah, 20 years ago, I was, I don't know, a teenager, a pretty young teen, and I, for whatever reason, became interested in psychotherapy. And at the time, I just saw psychology stuff, and yeah, I feel a need to bring out the part of what created my interest in doing something like this was this guy named Phil Donahue, and I know we've talked about him before, and now you know who he is, remember who he is, and a little about him, right?
Yeah, I remember Phil Donahue from when I was a kid. I don't really remember watching his show or...
I loved it.
Yeah, I think he got revived on CNN for a while, right? Didn't he do something there?
I don't
for a little
know.
bit?
I don't know what that guy's doing now at all.
I think he did for a little bit, but I don't think it worked out long term. But anyway,
if you can imagine this little kid. I mean, I was little. I might not even have been a teenager at the time when I found him on TV. He was an innovative TV guy for daytime radio or daytime TV shows, and he was passionate about what he did. He loved what he did, and you could tell by the way that he went about his business. They just, they covered all the topics of the day. Probably, he really didn't get into political stuff, but just general topics. Things that people were interested in, things that people were going on, and he would just run around with this big old long, shiny microphone that they had way back in the days. We won't say how long ago, but he would jump from one side of the audience to the other side of the audience and just bring people in.
Did he have like a panel? Was it like a Dr. Phil kind of deal?
No,
what was his format?
Dr. Phil. I love that guy. He stole my idea. More on that, I guess, some other day. No, he was himself. He was like a one man rolling machine before Oprah got big. He was the bomb. And I loved what he did because he just brought up a topic, started talking about it, and got people to talk about it. And I guess the reason why I'm talking about that so much is because one of the things I want to make sure we understand here, that everyone listening understands, that's the way I work. I believe very much about people getting together on topics and really talking about them like this guy did. Because he got a lot of information out from what's really in the audience. And, we want to make this show interactive as much as we can, given that it's you and me sitting here in this little studio deal, but people, I guess, all over the city, the state, the nation, maybe? Who knows? Yeah.
Around the globe.
Around the globe.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all have input in this show, in my view, through the blog site, because people are going to have questions and thoughts, and I really want to get us dialoguing.
Yeah. Well, Chris, tell us about what kind of things that listeners can expect when they come to listen to the Through a Therapist's Eyes show. What kind of topics are we going to cover? What kind of things are they going to walk out of there with? I can probably talk about the format some and stuff like that, but what do you see people getting from the discussions that we're going to have here going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm glad you're pinning that out there right in the beginning, because I'm very passionate about my life's work and what I have done in mental health, and I'm new to podcast listening. I don't do all of that stuff. You really turned me on to it. I've had different ideas about Through a Therapist's Eyes, and this is coming along really nicely, because I'm finding that people very much are getting into this form of interacting, and I want to make it more of a form of interacting with information, but a forum of interacting with information on mental health and substance abuse issues. That's a simple answer to your question. Mental health and substance abuse has been my life's work for, give or take 20 plus years. And as I said, I'm new to podcast listening, but in sort of research for the show, I was really interested at what's out there. And there's some stuff that's out there. Mental health gets some coverage. People understand in our culture nowadays that mental health is an issue. It is a topic that people are interested in. I think the advantage of this show, one of the foundation points of this show, is that I am a real, live, true, in the blue, have done it for many years now, therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I am a therapist. I'm a mental health and substance abuse therapist, is the way I introduce myself. It's funny, if I just say I'm a therapist, people look at me and say, "Oh, you do physical therapy?" I'm like, no, not physical therapy. I do mental health and substance abuse therapy, and I don't know if I'm true or not. You might be a better judge, but I don't think there's many people out there that are really doing the work, talking about it. There are a lot of people talking about it. Love that. That's good, but I'm doing the work day in and day out. I'm seeing people, and we're dealing with these things, and so I really want to talk about mental health issues, depression, anxiety, bipolar. I mean, dude, I've got a list of things that I have kind of gone in a book. I carry a book around me, and I'm thinking constantly about things I see in the media, things that I see in my office, things that I am experiencing in my life that need to be talked about.
Yeah.
So the idea and theme here is that's the name of the concept, right? Like, I want to open up a lens that people can see through my experience, as much as I can put that into words, as much as I can convey that, because the way that I see the world is through that lens that's developed over time, working with, my gosh, I've been honored to work with thousands of people. So I want to open up a perspective about mental health and substance abuse themed topics through this perspective that I've developed through the gift and honor of talking to so many people in such an intimate way about their lives.
Okay, that makes sense. So I kind of alluded to the format that we were going to be following. So should I speak to that, or
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So what Chris and I have kind of come up with is we've got, I don't know, we brainstormed 25 topics when we sat down and got our initial plans together and ideas together.
I think I got 40 now.
40 now. Okay, so we got our next 40 shows planned. So I hope you guys stay tuned. But on a serious note, sometimes it's just going to be he and I talking about a topic. Sometimes it's going to be an interview of maybe an expert in the industry. And we'd also like to get our audience involved. So you can go to our website, throughatherapisteyes.com, and there's going to be a blog and a podcast tab. And we're going to look for questions there. And some of those shows may just be question and answer sessions where we sit and answer questions that audience members have submitted. And, if people submit questions that could be topics for a whole show, we may just do that. I don't know. We already have 40 ideas, but obviously there's thousands we could probably cover when it comes to mental health and mental health issues. And so that's kind of the format of the show going forward. And so, Chris, tell us a little bit about you. I mean, you said you had this idea 20 years ago, but what is your background? I think you're from West Virginia. Is that right?
Yeah, from West Virginia. Came down to North Carolina because I had parents in West Virginia and in-laws in Florida, and we just decided to figure out somewhere in the middle with lakes, rivers, and trees, oceans, and the mountains. A great place to live here in the area. I want to be real brief because I want to get to some of the things that we talk about. But, I don't know. I do think it's important they understand a little bit about who's talking.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of did a lot of work over the years. Had a benefit of starting with substance abuse information, which a lot of people in my field do not have. By the way, that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. There's a lot of people in my field that do not do both mental health and substance abuse. I don't understand why there's such a great divide in our field, but there is. And I think that's something we need to work on really as an industry. But I started out teaching a DUI class years ago for people that were offenders and trying to get their license back, and I really learned in depth basic, but over and over again teaching that class, I don't know, probably hundreds of times. It really gave me a sound fundamental starting block with that. Did some stuff with crisis work. Did my got some experience. I was going to say I did my time in mental health centers. I shouldn't put it that way because that's where I really started to learn doing therapy in an adolescent substance abuse unit. But you're working with really, a lot of really deep issues and we'll get to some of the SBMI issues in the mental health field. That is severe. SBMI. Yep. SBMI, severe and persistently mentally ill folks. Severe and persistently mentally ill folks. And those are unfortunately...
Say that 10 times fast.
SBMI.
No, the whole thing.
No, we'll try. The point I was going to make about that is, man, you get people that are pretty severely ill. And in the history of healthcare, man, they used to have what they called insane asylums, they wouldn't be able to make it in society very well or very safely, really. So we put them into hospitals and put them into asylums. And that's, back in the 40s and 50s and stuff, and they were dangerous, rough places. But then we figured out that's not so good, and we did the community mental health system. And that's where I kind of started in my career. It was just about the time when that was building up. A bunch of federal funding came in to do a bunch of that. And anyway, they had the idea of wrapping around services in the area to help people be sustained around their families and the community, thus community mental health centers. But I said do my time because it's a hard job, man. Anybody that's out there working, in the Department of Social Services and in the various now we call them LMEs, local management entities in this state, they do good work, and unfortunately you kind of come out of school doing that, and we need to tip our cap to them because they're working with some pretty needy folks. As all that relates. Anyway, back to what I was doing. I did time working in mental health centers, and I think I probably did a few other things. The West Virginia Youth Advocate program when I was early in my career.
What is your formal education though? You went to WVU.
WVU. I'm proud Mountaineer.
Right.
West Virginia University. We're going to be really good this year in the football squad. I can't wait to see my boys come down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and beat Tennessee. Anyway, I went to WVU, graduated with a graduate degree there, and got licensed with my LCSW. We have a lot of training we have to do in order to do what I do. You go 4 years to get your undergraduate, you go 2 years to get your graduate, and then you do 2 more years, as being supervised, and then you can start doing independent work. After doing all that, I did managed care, therapy in a couple of different places, founded a company after I worked in somebody else's in the university area here in Charlotte, and, founded 2 companies, one first time with a couple partners, and currently I work at a psychotherapy practice in Belmont.
Tell us more about that. That's a practice you started, right?
Yeah, I founded it, and it's our sponsoring agency.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a sponsoring agency, Metrolina Psychotherapy Associates.
Is that a conflict of interest at all?
You told me I could do anything on podcasts I wanted to do. You're the expert.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's your show, man. It's your playground here.
What about you, man? What's your background briefly, and what's your interest in this show?
Well, I've been in technology for basically my whole career. I went to Western Carolina University here in North Carolina. And, technology's been my thing. So for the past 20 years or so, I've been in corporate America.
So you can help me with the technology piece.
I can help you with the technology piece. And that's why I'm here, folks. That's why I'm here. Yeah. So for the past 10 or 12 years, I've done some marketing, some small business marketing and digital marketing using social media and website construction and those kind of things. And I'm hoping to be able to get the word out for our show here through those channels. and to serve as many people as possible through the show. I think it's a great idea, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I think that's fantastic. For me personally, I've got 3 children. My oldest boy is 24 years old. He'll be 24 in September. I've got a 15-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. And the 10-year-old daughter may drive me into a therapist's office before it's over with.
My 16 and 13 basically already has. I talk about them all the time.
Different story. I like to keep in shape. I started the jiu-jitsu practice about a year ago. Run some Spartan races.
You started the practice?
Started doing that. Yeah, I've been rolling for about a year, which is a whole lot of fun. And my view on health and mental health and those kind of things comes more from a natural side, I would say. I'm not saying that drugs and pharmaceuticals and things like that aren't necessary, but normally I try to do those as a last resort. As part of my jiu-jitsu practice, I'm into breathing and breath control, and I do a lot of meditation and cold therapy and crazy stuff like that. So I'm hoping to bring
You want to back up to the cold therapy piece?
We'll cover that maybe some other time.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm hoping to bring maybe a more natural look at things to the show too, because I'm no expert by any means. Chris is the expert, but I'm told that there are things you can do naturally. And one of the things we're going to talk about on maybe in the next couple of shows is CBT.
Cognitive behavioral therapy?
Yeah, which I've found integrates a lot of those practices that people would consider Eastern.
It really does.
Into a Western medical practice. I think is very interesting. So that's that's kind of my background and what I hope to bring to the show here.
So I got a question for you.
Sure.
It's a simple question, but I'm curious how you would respond if I were to ask you, what is therapy?
What is therapy? I'm not really sure what therapy is. When I think about therapy, I think about going into a therapist's office, and sitting in the chair there or laying on the couch or whatever that thing is and talking through it, And I think those things are necessary. I think that people, especially men, might think that therapy's for weaklings or for wimps, but it's not. It's very beneficial. And one of the guys that I listen to on the internet is a guy named Mark Devine, who's a retired Navy SEAL commander, and he teaches mental toughness techniques to spec ops candidates. And one of the things he talks about in his practices or his teachings is emotional. He calls it the 5 mountains, and one of those mountains is the emotional mountain. And he thinks very highly of therapy. And this is a guy that was an honor man in his platoon, which means he was the top dog. And
want to mess with him,
right? Yeah, this is
No,
a guy
sir.
that kill you with his bare hands, and so, I think therapy's a good thing. I remember my first experience with therapy. I was in my early 30s, and I was going through some problems in my previous marriage. And a friend of ours that happens to work with you now set us up with a local therapist. And I thought, yeah, we're going to go get this woman fixed, and everything's going to be great when we get home.
Did that work out?
And I left that office thinking, holy cow, Craig, you've got some issues, buddy.
That's the thing, man.
It was enlightening. And I've tried to use that experience. I've used that experience since to try to evaluate where I'm at, because hey, it could be me. If I get mad at you after the show here, it could be my fault.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing. I'm nice answer. I don't know what you said therapy is though, but
I think it's like I said. I think it's going into the office and talking through the problems. That's my definition of it, which is probably totally off base. But
it's actually not really that off base. It's therapy is a dynamic process. But as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about, first of all, backing up. Part of why I think this show will be intriguing to open up the lens of perspective that I may have as a real therapist in today's eyes is I find an incredibly distinct interest in what I do when people find out what I do, when they figure out it's not physical therapy, it's the emotional therapy. They just ask me those questions. I mean, well, what's the craziest thing you've ever heard? Well, what do you say to people? Well, and then I love when I get how do you do that all day long, talking to people about people problems and stuff all the time? Like, there's a distinct interest in it. I mean, I could probably spend hours just, entertaining questions. As a matter of fact, I remember seeing on the podcast people asked this lady questions, and I think that she was a therapist, an active therapist herself. But anyway, the distinct interest in it is something I want to capture and take advantage of, because therapy really is a unique experience, unlike anything you can really have. And I try to help young therapists understand that. I like to supervise. I've had a passion for supervising young therapists and improving upon what we do in our industry. And I really try to make the point to them that really when you're starting out doing this, you do not really understand, first of all, the honor and privilege it is to sit down with somebody who's being so openly vulnerable with you. I would probably be remiss to not say thank you to the many people that I've had the privilege to be with at very tough times in their life, because I've learned so much. But a young therapist doesn't really understand that the very nature of what you're doing in this dynamic relationship that is developed between a therapist and a patient, and the exploration that goes on, and the type of interaction that you have. Right now, if I'm having a conversation with you, you're listening to my words, and you're probably thinking about my words, but you're really thinking about what you're going to say, and you're going to wait till I stop talking. And then you're going to say what we're going to say. And I'm going to do the same thing to you. I'm going to think about what you're saying a little bit, and maybe it'll influence what I'm saying a little bit, but I'm going to go through and say what I'm thinking about. So therapy is for the very first time in somebody's life that you sit down for a completely very extended period of time, that somebody is fully dialed in, fully focused on, and working with the issues that you're bringing to the table fully for your benefit. So it's a dynamic experience where you explore, you learn, you do heal, you express, and you ask questions about yourself that you would never come to otherwise, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a little bit of a taste of how I see therapy.
Interesting. That's good stuff.
So I also, I want to be quick to get into a couple of things that I wanted to talk about maybe for our first show. But man, I feel like, we get to talking about these things. I feel like we can go on and on.
Yeah, we can sit here all night probably.
The cornerstone of what I talk about, in therapy with people, I want to mention maybe real briefly and then go to the other piece, Craig. So the cornerstone of mental health is my term that I've coined. I'm sure that it's been used before, but I say the cornerstone of mental health is self-care. Now, therapists will talk about self-care all the time in their practice and stuff because it is such a core component of what you got to do to manage life. Mm-hmm. Everyone laughs, you're going to go do your retail therapy, maybe drink a couple beers to relax. I want to go buy something. For some reason, human beings are bent towards what my dear friend Julie calls her negative coping mechanisms. I'm going to employ my negative coping mechanisms. We have such great psychobabble in culture nowadays. I love it. This makes me laugh. Why we're not drawn to some of the healthier things we can do, I don't know. But one of the things I would get people here to maybe at least think about is the value of taking that time out, taking those even 5 minutes through the day. I say self-care are fun, relaxing, enjoyable activities that are not self-destructive in any way, and they're not work-related tasks. And that sounds simple, and that sounds really easy to do, but Craig, I can't tell you how many times in a therapy session I ask people what they do for self-care, and they look at me with cross-eyed.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't doubt that.
And then when we find out some of the things that they might like to do, I like to go fishing. I like to watch movies. I like to read a book. Well, when's the last time, what are you reading now?
Don't have time.
No. Well, you've been fishing? I mean, you ever go?
No, I haven't been fishing.
You watch Thor in the movie theater?
No, I haven't done that either.
Right. You're perfect because that's what I find. So it could be 5 minutes in time. It can be, 5 weeks of sabbatical. or it can be $5,000 or no money at all. But it's just really, really crucial. The basic things in life: time out, checking out. You gotta pull away from the stuff that's bothering you, it's stressing you out, and then you gotta plug back in.
Right.
Right. You gotta plug back in though.
Right. I agree.
So that's something I definitely wanted to hit. The other thing I kind of wanted to hit was, I think you know where I'm going. We were talking about this, and I talked about it, and kind of thought after we talked, I was like, man, now he knows what I'm going to do. I wanted to put you on the spot.
All right.
Yeah, but you already know where we're going. That's okay though. Those two questions, if you remember, we talked about. What is physical health mean to you, and what does mental health mean to you? How can you compare and contrast the two?
Have you asked me those before?
Yeah.
Physical health, to me, if I'm thinking about being physically healthy, it's really, eating. I think proper diet. I'm kind of a health nut, if you will, when it comes to that. At least I try to do at least a 80-20. 80 good, and 20 may not be as good, but
Chocolate.
Yeah. Sleep. I think sleep is the foundation of probably both of those, maybe, but definitely physically, I think sleep is very important. I think it's overlooked in our society, the importance of sleep. And obviously physical activity, so diet, sleep, and physical activity is where I think about physical health being. Mental health, to me, that is how would I define mental health? I think physical health is probably a component of mental health to me. You need to be physically healthy, and I think diet and nutrition, I think that plays a part in mental health, and you can probably elaborate more on that, but things that I've read kind of point in that direction, I think it's taking those timeouts that you're talking about doing, that you're talking about people need, meditation, or whether it's meditation, which I've read a lot about and done a lot of study on, and done a lot of that myself here recently within the past 3 or 4 years. But, I think mental health is probably a component of those things too, And one of the things that I've learned about in the past 3 or 4 years through the teachings of Mark Divine and Spartan and those guys is physical health or physical challenges can also be a training in mental toughness, or on the mental side.
Let's try something really quick, Greg. List 3 things that you do to take care of your physical health.
I eat well.
Right.
I exercise.
Right.
I guess you could classify jiu-jitsu as part of that.
Oh yeah.
But jiu-jitsu is definitely something that I do. And I do yoga.
One more?
I think mobility. That's
stretching. Yep. One more.
One more for physical health.
Mm-hmm.
So I said nutrition, physical activity, and
stretching. And
yeah. I would say that includes stretching. And sleep. I guess that's the 3 things that come to my mind.
What do you do for 3 things to take care?
For 3.
Yeah. Well, what do you do for 3 things to take care of your mental health?
I read a lot. I sit in meditation. I would say jiu-jitsu is a mental activity, and yoga is also a mental activity because you're calming the mind and you're breathing, through those activities. And then physical challenges. I think that, if you put yourself through a challenge that you have to use your mind to get through, there's a saying that the body follows the mind, so if you can push through a physical challenge, that builds the mind, and at least in my opinion. And a lot of opinions of people that you could listen to.
If you were to think about the things that you just said in response to both of them, thank you for your being put on the spot tolerance, whatever you call that. Would you say that your physical understanding of your physical health, taking care of that, sort of really blends over into your mental health in the way that you just answered it?
Yeah, I do think they work hand in hand.
And though I know that they do and totally agree with you, what I'm not hearing in there is a lot of the very specific things to say, no, to take care of my feelings is what I do. To take care of my emotions, this is what I do. To take care of my emotional experience is not taught, not thought of, not natural. I don't think people sit down and really think about that. But you could probably go on and think about talk about nutrition and talk about exercise and talk about, seeing your doctor, talk about, resting when you have a cold or drinking lots of fluids. I mean, you hear all these things, and I can go on and on and on. Old wives' tales of things that you do to take care of your sicknesses and health and all that. How much phrases, how many concepts do we have about our mental health? I would submit to you very few.
Right. I would agree totally.
Very few. I was so excited years ago. As I said, I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. And I forget, I have no idea what class it was that they took, but somewhere along elementary school, my kid brought home a book, a textbook, and it must have been a health class or something. I have no idea, but they actually had paragraphs. I think a whole chapter on what to do in order to take care of your feelings. You talk about your feelings. You let people know what you're going through. You slow down and you think about, options in your situation. And I don't know. That's actually just my adult brain just starting to go off on to answer my own question. But to have that, I mean, I never had anything like that when I was growing up. I never had anybody telling me exactly what to do when it comes to, how do you take care of all of that? So I want to have a really, really thorough answer. I want to have meditation. I want to have, talk to trusted people, build personally, purposefully build relationships with people that you can trust, learn how to be vulnerable, write down your thoughts and feelings. Again, I can go on and on,
Right.
Breathing is a piece of it. I want people to know.
Yeah. I think those are probably all shows in and of themselves.
And we're going to cover them, man. This, they say the first episode of a podcast is the hardest to do. And I think there's so much to cover in some of the basics. And
yeah,
I think we nailed it.
Yeah. I think it's all uphill from here.
I think we nailed it. Absolutely. Episode 2. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was just going to say if you had any closing comments, but obviously you do. So
Yes,
let's
sir.
hear it.
Episode 2. I want you to know and understand what we want to do moving forward. Try to think, and I'm still really going to think, because we can always pull audibles so the audience recognizes that flexibility. But the second episode, I was trying to think, what can we really do that would be a pretty good way to start on a good, solid meat and potatoes kind of thing on mental health. And, I find that people want to be happy. That's what they want. They come to therapy and they say, I want to be happy. So we're going to talk about the elusive mental health goal of contentment.
Awesome.
Why don't you take us out with what these people need to do and clicking buttons and all that kind of stuff, man? Because I told you, I don't think they all know.
You can find out more about the show on throughitherapisteyes.com. We've got links to our Facebook, our Instagram. We may even put up a Twitter by the time the podcast is released. Chris is still
coming. We can do twitting?
We can tweet. Yeah, we can tweet. So
Tweeting.
Chris is still coming up to speed on some of his social channels. You can find me. I'm J. Craig Graves on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, just about everywhere you can find me. Hopefully I'll have jcraiggraves.com up by the time this is released too, and you can find me out there.
I'm at metpsych.com and throughitherapisteyes.com, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly right. Anything else, Chris, before we close?
I think that'll do, Craig. This was fun. I'm going to have a lot of fun with you. I'm so appreciative of you being willing to do this with me. I think that we're going to really, hopefully, ultimately help a lot of people and blow up a lot of myths, blow up a lot of stereotypes, get a lot of information out there about really important topics.
Be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. You're welcome. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much.